Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Provincial HSJCC webinar. My name is Trevor Timchuk. I'm a person with lived experience and a consultant with the Provincial HSJCC, and I will be your host today. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping items. The webinar is being recorded and will conclude at 1 p.m. We will be enabling the chat box shortly. You can leave comments in there. However, to make it easier to go through questions, we ask that you use the Q&A box. There will be a dedicated Q&A period at the end of our webinar. The link to the recording, slides, and resources will be emailed to you following the webinar. They will also be posted to the HSJCC's YouTube and website. We will hold a few minutes at the end of the webinar for a short survey to hear your feedback from today's session. The survey will also be emailed to you following the webinar. The Human Services and Justice Coordinating Committee Network is comprised of 38 local committees, 14 regional committees, and 1 provincial HSJCC. Each is a voluntary collaboration between health and social service organizations, community mental health and addiction organizations, and partners from the justice sector, including Crown attorneys, judges, police services, and correctional service providers. Please visit our website for more information. Before I hand it over to our presenters, Emma Jane from the HSJCC Secretariat will be providing today's land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Trevor. While we are meeting virtually, I want to recognize that my home and the CMHA Ontario office are located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, Chippewas, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat peoples. Toronto is also covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. Although these treaties were created using the principles of peace, friendship, and mutual respect, colonial systems have often failed to uphold them, resulting in lasting harm. This acknowledgement invites us to reflect on our own accountability and how we can contribute to truth, reconciliation, and rebuilding relationships through the work we do every day. In preparing today's acknowledgement, I reflected on my own experience working in intimate partner violence programming. It was one of the most rewarding roles I've ever held. Supporting individuals on their accountability journeys while creating a safe and non-judgmental space for learning and healing taught me a lot about the value of connection and community. This work continually reinforced how much culture and connection shape people's learning experiences. Co-facilitating with my colleagues from diverse backgrounds showed how certain perspectives were able to reach clients in different ways and reminded me that healing and accountability look different for everybody. I feel that the ability to meet clients where they are at really strengthens programming and deepens understanding, and that outcomes improve when our programs are culturally responsive and community-driven. Too often, the systems and programs designed to address intimate partner violence still reflect colonial legacies, which are rooted in standardized approaches that overlook Indigenous and culturally specific ways of learning and healing. Recognizing and changing this is a part of what makes today's conversation so important. Today, the OFIFC will be sharing about Friendship Center's Indigenous Specific Intimate Partner Violence programs. I first learned about the Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin program, meaning I am a kind man, when I joined the HSJCC Secretariat earlier this year. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I'm honored to help promote and learn from programs like Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin. These initiatives are powerful because they center Indigenous voices, values, and ways of healing. They deserve the same weight, recognition, and support as other programs across the sector because they offer culturally grounded and holistic approaches that empower clients to take accountability, rebuild trust, and strengthen communities. Recognizing and uplifting these approaches is what reconciliation in practice truly looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma Jane. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today, Hayden, Nick, Keanna, and Chelsea from the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centers.
Okay. Hi, everyone. And can I just confirm? Perfect. Thank you, Nick. As our presentation is getting up there, I will just start and say hello, everyone. My name is Hayden, and I am the Senior Policy Advisor for Justice at the OFIFC. First of all, we want to thank the HSJCC for inviting us back to this forum, and also for all of you who have joined us today. Along with me are my colleagues, Keanna, Nick, and Chelsea. Unfortunately, our colleague Prairie isn't able to attend today as originally planned. And we're also really excited to have Chris and Pearl from the North Bay Indigenous Friendship Center, who will share some program insights later on in our presentation. So today we're going to be talking to you about Indigenous Specific Intimate Partner Violence Prevention Programs. And in our presentation, we will provide an overview of those designated IS-IPVP programs, explain what an IS-IPVP is and how it differs from the mainstream offerings. And we'll also touch on the responsibilities to victims and survivors within those programs. Thank you, Nick. So first off, who are we? Oh, sorry, no, with the OFIFC, sorry. Who are we? So this is our second session and is part of an ongoing series that we're presenting with the HSJCC. Our first presentation provided a deeper dive into the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centres, or the OFIFC. So for now, I'll keep it really brief and just say that the OFIFC was founded in 1971, and we work to support the shared interests of our 31 member friendship centres. Our work is directed by the priorities of the friendship centres, and we support them with things like funding, training, policy work, and advocacy, as well as program supports in a number of areas, including justice, children and youth, housing, education, and ending violence against Indigenous women and girls. And Nick, if we could move on now to slide 3. Thank you. And so here I mentioned our 31 member friendship centers. And so the map, you can see where they fall across the province. And again, very briefly, as we touched on it in our previous session, but what is the friendship center movement? So it is a movement that began in the 1950s and 60s. And these days, friendship centers provide community-based, culturally appropriate wraparound supports to urban Indigenous communities. Importantly, they are status blind and serve any self-identifying Indigenous people seeking support. The Friendship Center movement is the country's most significant urban Indigenous service delivery system, and in Ontario, it is a critical piece of the province's justice infrastructure. And with that, I will pass it over to Keanna. Thank you.
Hi. So before diving into the actual program descriptions, we thought it would be helpful to provide a brief overview of the policy background to explain where programs such as Kizhaay, Anishinaabe, Niin, and ICJP emerged from. So after a lot of collective action, the Inquiry to Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls was developed and released in 2016. This report comprehensively laid out how the ongoing effects of colonialism have put Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people in vulnerable positions that often lead to violence. The report laid out 231 calls for justice to hold the provincial and federal government, as well as organizations such as the OFIFC, accountable to ending violence against Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people. Among the calls for justice, there was a call to develop violence prevention and intervention programs such as Kizhaay, Anishinaabe, Niin, and ICJP. Next slide. So it's more specifically, the National Inquiry's calls for Justice 1.8, 3.2, and 3.3 call for the creation of sustainable core funding for Indigenous-led violence prevention programs and education and awareness initiatives, and to provide adequate funding for Indigenous-centered community-based wellness initiatives. Next slide. So these calls for justice really aligned with the OFIFC's key policy priorities. First, to develop violence prevention programs for boys and men, to mitigate violence and promote community safety, and to foster trauma-informed care for reintegration after violence or incarceration. So now that you have a little bit of the background for the policy that led to programs like Kizhaay, Anishinaabe, Niin, and ICJP, I'm going to hand it off to Nick and Chelsea to explain more about the programs.
Thanks, Keanna. So, hi everyone. My name is Nick. Thanks for joining us today. So, for those who don't know, PAR stands for Partner Assault Response. And these are court-sanctioned programs that are designed for people who have been charged with domestic or intimate partner violence. And I think for the most part, PAR is usually a condition of probation or a court order. And generally speaking, these programs are usually about 12 sessions long, and they cover standardized topics like, the effects of violence on children or partners, how to recognize triggers and possibly warning signs, dealing with conflict, and developing communication skills. So each of the participants is usually expected to pay for these sessions themselves too, and they're typically, I think, around 150 to 180, $85 a session. So, that's a significant financial barrier for a lot of people. And generally, the goal of these programs is to change people's behaviors and their attitudes towards violence. And really, while these programs can kind of really help a lot of people reflect on their actions and move forward in a good way, we have to recognize that this is sort of a Western or mainstream, if you want to call it, model of intervention, right? And they're operating within this justice system that is not really designed around Indigenous, defined very broadly, understandings of harm or healing or accountability. So with that being said, there are several reasons why PAR programs may not or often do not work very effectively for Indigenous participants. As I mentioned, they often follow a sort of one-size-fits-all model, right? These are standardized programs, meaning that they don't really adapt to an individual's background, community, or their cultural context. They sort of assume that everyone kind of learns and heals in the same way, which is, as we know, that's simply not true for everybody, right? Indigenous people in particular, whose experience of violence are often connected to things like colonial trauma and systematic or systemic inequality. They also sort of generally, as they're defined, they focus on behavior correction rather than a broader focus on healing, right? So violence is understood as like an individual problem that should be fixed through education rather than a broader symptom of these deeper issues, like a loss of culture, racism, poverty, intergenerational trauma, and things like that. And often these programs don't create space for Indigenous participants to explore or reflect on those roots or connect with their identity and those community supports. So, they may not be a great space to reflect on experiences of racism or colonial harm that contribute often to those cycles of violence, right? Often, if instead of feeling supported, Indigenous participants may end up feeling re-traumatized or further disconnected in many senses. Another big difference here is that PAR programs don't usually focus on the importance of broader community accountability, right? So as we'll get into talking about IS-IPVP or Friendship Center programs more generally, healing and justice is kind of understood more about restoring balance and repairing harm and repairing relationships with families and community instead of that focus on the individual. And of course, as I mentioned, the cost and the accessibility of PAR programs can make them really inaccessible to Indigenous people or urban Indigenous people who may be living, in precarious housing or poverty or support. So often participation, as we've seen in these programs, can become more of like a technical requirement to satisfy the court rather than sort of a meaningful thing. So Indigenous specific approaches to addressing violence, as we mentioned, really take a holistic and relational view of justice, right? As we mentioned, the programs that we're going to be speaking about today come from the understanding that healing cannot be imposed. It has to be rather supported and guided within community. And these IS-IPVP approaches that we're going to be talking about, they really seek to encourage people to take responsibility, not just for what they did, but for the broader harms that may have been caused to their families, to their partners, to their communities, and to themselves too, right? So because of that, success in these programs is really measured beyond just attendance. It's more about personal transformation and reconnection to their roles in community. So Kizhaay, Anishinaabe, Niin, as you're going to hear about, I am a kind man. There's an emphasis of creating space for those men or male identifying people to step into their roles in community as kind men, right? And they really build accountability through those relationships through teachings and community engagement. And so the hope is that they really create pathways to healing, and rather than simply managing behaviors, right? So with that being said, I'll try to change my screen. As you're probably aware, the Ontario Federation of Indigenous Friendship Centers and the Friendship Center movement, I suppose, more broadly, administers 2 IS-IPVP designated or court-recognized programs that address intimate partner violence and healing. The first of which is Anishinaabe Niin, I Am a Kind Man. The second one, which we're going to be speaking about today, is the Indigenous Community Justice Program, or ICJP. And the approaches are different in many ways. They're very grounded in the same sort of approach to justice as well, right? Both of these programs reflect the Friendship Center movement's history of community-led justice work, or community-led approaches to justice. So very briefly, because we're going to get into these in a little bit more detail, ICJP, which began in, I believe, 1999, it provides sort of a community-based alternative to the criminal justice system. Participants there are really supported to take responsibility for their actions, repair the harm that may have resulted from their actions, and, as I mentioned, reconnect with culture, their teachings, and their communities as part of their healing journey. And in May 2021, the ICJP program was formally designated as a IS-IPVP program. Anishinaabe Niin, as I mentioned, translates to I Am a Kind Man, really carries the same vision of healing and accountability. And it supports Indigenous men, male youth, and male identifying people in understanding their roles and responsibilities in ending violence by connecting them to their culture and teachings. And it also really encourages men and male identifying people to become advocates for ending violence against Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people in community as well. So with all of these programs, with these 2 programs together, the Friendship Center movement and the OFIFC sort of administers 30 of the 43 Indigenous Specific intimate partner violence program sites in Ontario. So it's an important approach to justice that's community-based. And as we'll hear from my fellow O5C friends, but more importantly, from the people that are doing the work on the ground, Sandy and Chris, Pearl and Chris, it's a real value in terms of their impacts on people and communities. So with that little brief introduction, I'm going to pass it over to Chelsea.
Hey, thanks, Nick. Hi, everyone. My name is Chelsea. So just to pick up off on what Hayden and Nick has already kind of talked about, there is lots of value in the IS-IPVP programs for urban Indigenous clients. For example, clients get to receive culture-based programming where they otherwise may not have had the opportunity to access culture with other PAR programs. They can also access culture, healing, and community as well. And this also provides program flexibility. So program flexibility is already built into the programs, which I think is really key in ensuring that clients can be successful. The O5C does recognize that sometimes it might take some time for trust to be built between the program coordinator, for example, and their clients. And we also just take into consideration that decolonizing mindsets and the decolonization process in general takes time, and it's a process on its own. Or, for example, a client may have complex needs, so they may have specific conditions or legal obligations that they need to adhere to. And so I think that's a really nice factor about the programs. And also, like Nick mentioned, the normal PAR programs, there is a fee. And so with the IS-IPVP programs, they are free of charge, which I think is great because it immediately alleviates barriers to accessing the programs. There's also an added benefit of having a court-sanctioned IS-IPVP within the Friendship Center movement, and also just to ensure that clients and their families receive the wraparound supports that are offered through the Friendship Centers. And the support from Friendship Centers generates a sense of community and pride within the individuals and creates opportunities for families to access culture and land-based activities. So now we'll get into, next slide, please. So Now we're going to go into more of the specific details about kind of how the programs run and more details about each of them. So Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin is one of the great IS-IPV programs that OFIFC offers. Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin was an initiated program that was created to provide an opportunity for communities to engage Indigenous men and youth in understanding violence against Indigenous women, but to also support them in joining together to end violence. Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin is actually an Ojibwe phrase, and as Nick has already said, this translates to "I am a kind man." And the program grew out of the need to design and deliver a holistic program model that values the importance of engaging men, which is an integral component to ending all forms of violence against Indigenous women, girls, and women and girls. So the program is comprised of two components. So firstly, there's a provincial awareness campaign that provides public education. And then it's also a community-based program that's delivered at 26 sites across Ontario. And so like the mainstream part, clients referred to Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin will participate in a 12-week program. However, unlike the mainstream part, clients will begin to unpack some of the root causes of the harmful behaviors. They'll learn how colonization eroded the societal fabric of Indigenous communities, and how patriarchy and misogynistic views were also kind of pushed onto Indigenous communities. And also overall, just how violence was never a part of Indigenous culture. The men in these programs will also learn the 7 grandfather teachings, and through that are able to walk with humility, bravery, honesty, wisdom, truth, respect, and love in their everyday living. And clients will also be able to gain access to culture as a healthy coping mechanism. And for some clients, this might be the initial entry point for them to learn about their culture and just reconnect with their Indigenous identity. And so there's 5 major themes of the Kizhaay Anishinaabe program. So the first one is self-esteem and identity. So this focuses on educating about the effects of colonization, like I've already talked about, and unpacking what the traditional roles and responsibilities of men, women, and families were, and increase cultural pride through the promotion of Indigenous culture and teachings, but also fostering that self-esteem and healthy role modeling as well. Also, there's a provision of social supports. So to reduce violence against Indigenous women and girls through addressing trauma and unhealthy behaviors and promoting more healthy, equitable relationships through peer counseling, support, and awareness. Education and prevention, like we said, is also a big piece. So focusing on educate on the imposed historical context beyond violence that's been perpetuated, and also the effects and impacts of intergenerational trauma in Indigenous families. Also, it's an alternative, like we said, to institutional involvement. So this gives an opportunity to engage the justice stakeholders, including police, courts, and the correctional systems, to provide opportunities for individuals that are involved in the justice system to have access to culturally appropriate opportunities for individuals in the system that are appropriate. So for pre-charge, post-charge, conditional release, and early release programming. And then finally, promotion and networking. So, it provides an opportunity to promote healthy communities through increased awareness around the issues of violence against Indigenous women and girls, and to also promote cooperation and collaboration amongst service providers. So through the social services and justice services as well. So that they can better support Indigenous families through culturally appropriate referral services. So I'll pass it back to Nick to touch on ICJP.
Great, thanks very much. So yeah, as we mentioned, ICJP, the Indigenous Community Justice Program, I'm not just biased because a lot of my work supports this program. It's really a fantastic approach, and it's all due to the work of people like Pearl and Chris, who are, as I mentioned, in community and doing this good work. So it's currently delivered in 6 friendship centers across Ontario, and it offers, an Indigenous-led, a community-based alternative to the mainstream court system for people that have come in conflict with the law. So in terms of IS-IPVP referrals, generally what we see is that Indigenous men or male identifying people will go to the Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin program, and others will go to ICJP. But of course, that's flexible. And this program focuses, as you know, a general theme of the day is on healing and accountability rather than punishment. You know, and a lot of studies have showed that punishment is not particularly effective at addressing recidivism and people's behaviors, right? So instead of really asking the question like, what law was broken, how should that person be punished, the focus really is on who was harmed and what needs to be done to repair that harm, and how can that person be supported to change and sort of get on a good path moving forward. And a key part of this program is that it keeps people connected to community, right? So it keeps people housed, employed, and supported. And really, I think most importantly, surrounded by people in community that want to see them do better and make better choices as well, which is really powerful. And again, like all programs within the Friendship Center movement, it connects them to a wide range of services and supports beyond the immediate focus of the program, right? So, you know, coordinators will often refer people to housing supports and other supports that will help them in a holistic way. So when someone is referred to ICJP, the Indigenous Community Justice Program, they generally meet with a council of trained community volunteers and elders known as a healing circle. So this is, I think, usually around 8, 9, 10 people. The victim, of course, if they're a victim, is invited to take part if they wish. They don't have to. They're welcome to write a letter or send someone to speak for them, but they're encouraged to be part of this as a healing process. And together, collectively, the circle really discusses the circumstances around the offense. Well, sorry, my kids just walked in. The impact that it's had and the underlying factors that contributed to it. So things like trauma, addiction, grief, poverty, or those disconnections from culture and community, right? Not to say that accountability and taking accountability for one's actions isn't a key part of it as well, because it is. So those healing circles are really central to the ICJP program. And they create space for honesty, for accountability, and for understanding, right? As I said, it's not about punishment. It's really about getting to the heart of what led to that harm or what led to that action, and supporting that person in making things right and having real lasting change. So from that conversation comes a healing plan, which is developed collaboratively. It's not something that's developed beforehand and then sort of checked off by the circle. It comes out of that process, those discussions. And these plans are not quick fixes or symbolic gestures like writing an apology letter or something like that. The goal is really to focus on the root causes of the behavior, right? So addressing those things such as trauma, addiction, cultural disconnection, life circumstances that led that person to take those actions or do that thing, and then building a path forward, as I mentioned. So, you know, healing plans are individual, of course, but they could include things like counseling, attending ceremony, reconnecting, giving back to community in different ways. But the key part of it is that that person takes accountability for their actions, and they need to come to that decision themselves, right? They need to decide that, yeah, I'm here because I'm deciding to be here myself. I want to take accountability for what I've done, and I want to be supported in making things right, repairing harm, and moving forward in a good way. So they're really supported by, you know, community, and that's a powerful thing in terms of showing that they're not on this journey themselves, and that process of healing and personal growth is one that's supported. So generally, the participant has a set period of time to complete their plan, and the coordinator often stays in contact with them, helping them stay on track, helping them navigate the ups and downs of the process. And as I mentioned, linking them to those additional supports that may be needed. They're also usually in touch with the Crown Attorney's office, for example, letting them know how things are going. And then once the healing plan sort of the stipulations as agreed with the Crown Attorney is completed, charges can be withdrawn. Often, if more time is needed, they can negotiate that to get an extension for healing plans to be completed. So yeah, it's been really successful. There's been a lot of strong community engagement and a really significant number of successful diversions. So I think the results show that these sorts of approaches really do lead to better outcomes for individuals, for families, and for the broader community. So hopefully that's a good introduction to the program. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to my colleagues.
All right. That would be me. We just quickly wanted to highlight that there are aftercare supports available through the IS-IPVP programs, and we've really just listed them here. There are, for example, continued check-ins with coordinators and mentors. There's continued access to cultural supports, elders, and ceremony. There's also internal and external referrals based on an individual's needs, for example, whether that's housing, employment, or something else. And then there's also opportunities for peer mentorship and giving back to the community. And next slide, please.
Hey, thanks, Hayden. So Nick kind of touched on this, but just quickly, just to reiterate, there is the victim and survivor engagement component with the IS-IPVP programs. And so contacting the victim or survivor is a mandatory component of the IS-IPVP. And that's, like Nick said, if the victim or survivor wants to be involved. And also as an IS-IPVP, the Friendship Center is accountable to the victim or survivor and their families as well. And for intimate partner violence referrals, ensuring the victim and survivor's well-being and safety is required. And so it's really nice to know that these programs are able to be flexible with them and their families. They're also able to support these individuals through whether it's internal referrals for other Friendship Center programs, such as the Healing and Wellness Program, for example. And the program coordinators can also support the victim or survivor by creating a safety plan as well. We know that the impact of providing a safe space to victims to share how the offense has caused harm to them is really helpful, and I think it's important. And employing the Friendship Center staff wraparound service model will also ensure that the victims and their families are having all their needs addressed at the same time. And like we said, internal referrals within the Friendship Center and external programs can be made to support the victims and survivors and their families throughout the process. So I'll pass it back to Hayden to touch on how folks can work with local Friendship Centers.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. And yeah, we just like to include this because it's usually a question that we get from folks as to like, these sound interesting. We'd like to learn more. How do we connect with or work with our local Friendship Center? So these are just a few of our suggestions. We always suggest just like reach out, contact your local Friendship Center, introduce yourself, visit, participate in any local community events, get to know your local urban Indigenous community, suggest or organize a lunch and learn with your local Friendship Center. We also recommend if some of you may be already working with a Friendship Center, developing an MOU to better understand, to better clarify everyone's roles and responsibilities and how you can support shared clients. And also, you're welcome to always get in touch with us here at the OFIFC. We are happy to help, happy to assist, make community connections. So please feel free to contact any of us. And with that, if we could go to the next slide, please. And very happy, as we said, to have Pearl and Chris here with us today. And they are going to share just some of their program insights or successes with you folks. So thank you again, Chris and Pearl.
Hi, how's everybody doing today?
Great, thank you. I
All
think
right.
everyone else is forced to be on mute.
Oh, okay, perfect. All right. So yeah, we just highlighted the successes are too many to list, which is a positive thing to have in our program here in North Bay. So we just wanted to touch on a couple of we've got 4 gentlemen who have taken the program who've given permission to share about their time in the program with us. So firstly, we have Nicholas. So Nicholas has graduated the program 6 months ago. Um, when Nicholas came in, he was very lost, very hesitant to share. But through his 12 weeks in the program and building relationships with other men in the group, he really flourished. Nicholas came in and shared with Pearl and I about a month ago. He graduated high school this past spring, which he credits to his time in the program. Not only did he graduate, he was actually his class valedictorian. And now is looking at going to post-secondary education and volunteering in the center and coming back into the I Am a Kind Man program to share about his time in the program and what he took away from the group with other men to really help continue to build the community of the Kizhaay Anishinaabe Niin program that we have here in North Bay. Something we do that might be a little bit different. We find that the healing happens in community, which is the great thing about this program versus that mainstream PARS program. So we really focus on building a community with people, meeting clients where they're at so that they feel comfortable engaging in the program and with other community members. One thing we do to help with that is we've got sweatshirts that we give all our graduates. We call our program Kizhaay Ojakaida, which means kind warrior. So we've got army of people now walking around North Bay in these red sweatshirts. Different cohorts meet for coffee at Tim Hortons, even after the group is done. We really have that community support in the program, which is absolutely phenomenal. Did you want to talk about Noden, Pearl? Noden, maybe?
Yeah, we do have one of our youth. He came in as a youth, and when he first started, he was he was giving up. He was at the point where he was like, I just give up. I'm just going to go back to jail. I have a place to stay. I have some food. And so we sat down with him and had a talk with him and started going through and setting some short-term goals and long-term goals. And so he's graduated successfully. He was in the program for almost 1 year. He is now, he's got a wonderful resume. We connected him with our Patiswin program at the center, so they were able to help him with his resume. Also in helping him with mock interviewing as well. Our programs at the center are amazing. They meet you where you are. They help you and support you in any way. We all get together. Sometimes we'll even create a group of people, support people for that specific person, ensuring that we're all on the page and that we can support them in any way possible. He's doing great. He's had his interview and we're just waiting for the results of that. So hopefully that would turn out great. And that was from our Intimate Partner Violence Prevention Program. Another thing too, with the Friendship Center, sometimes with staff turnovers, there was quite some time before Chris had joined us as our Kizhaay worker. We didn't have a Kizhaay worker for a little while. And the program, we still had some individuals that were within the program with probation and parole. And they were quite at the ending of completing the program, and we didn't want to just leave them there. So what we did was we communicated with Crown. It's very important to keep that communication and community building. So we communicated with Crown and had explained to Crown what was going on. The position was vacant for a little while at this point. We then communicated with OFIFC, of course, and as well as probation and parole. And so what we were able to do was we were able to provide these individuals with cultural components to complete the program. And Crown and probation, parole, and OFIFC were okay with that. So that was another great success as well. I know sometimes, positions can go vacant for a little while, but if you work together and you get those supports of the center together in the community building, we can get them through those programs. And another thing too, thank you for the introduction on the program for the community justice program. Another thing about that too is just that community building and really getting to know your community and getting to know the programs within the community. Where are they? Where are their gaps? How can we help fix them? How can we get those wraparound services? And keeping that aftercare going is extremely important. You know, Chris, maybe Chris could share about his Thanksgiving circle. He actually had a Thanksgiving circle. You know, everybody, it was Thanksgiving Day. It was on a Monday, but as he knew, there was some individuals there that didn't have a family, didn't have anywhere to go, and that were looking forward to that circle. It was a circle every week that they would have. And so Chris went ahead and he held the program and provided them with some good food. So it's about being there and making that time and the scheduling too, and just working with your community supports. There's one more success I'd like to share. This one was, I've been in the position for about 4 years now, and I had never met the pre-diversion police officer. And we have a pre-diversion police officer here in North Bay. He's wonderful, great. But I didn't know he was here for the longest time, and I was over at the courthouse one day. And I was like, oh man, you know, the officer was standing there and I was so frustrated. And I'm like, don't you guys have a pre-diversion worker officer? He's all, well, that's me. I'm like, what, are you serious? Right? It was just, you know, we just happened to meet in the right place. And I was actually there for that client for the pre-diversion. And she was a nursing student. She was her second year nursing student. And she had no priors. It was her first criminal charge. And she had to finish her clinicals. Well, with nursing students, I guess they only have a certain amount of time to complete their nursing and her clinicals. Otherwise, she'd have to restart over. Well, she was originally screened with a conditional discharge. Conditional discharge, it'll still be on your record for a little bit of time. And she was originally screened with that. But then after talking with Crown, they agreed on a Indigenous diversion. And we're like, okay, well, that's great, but she still has this on her record. So what we had to do is after she completed all her programming and taken accountability for her actions, and we had several support circles at the college with her professors, we were able to get that Indigenous diversion. She was able to complete everything. And now she's going on for her clinicals. Well, she comes back and now she has a criminal record. And we're like, oh no, what are we going to do? So we contact the Crown, we contact police. So we had to contact RCMP to have that removed, but it took them 3 months to remove it. So Crown attorney, if you have this connection with the courts, it's always great to have this connection with the courts when you're working in positions like this with Chris. And they were able to provide us with the transcripts from that court to say that the judge had withdrawn all her charges, so she was able to continue on with her schooling, and she graduated. So those are just some great successes that we have in working together in our community building and with our programs at the center.
And yeah, thank you, Pearl. So the successes are, there's, like I said, too many to list. I have James was another client of ours, and he actually wrote something up for me to share with you guys today. James was coming to us out of our Red Road to Sobriety 12-step program, and really wanted to keep the momentum going to discover another step forward. He says, I found the things that we talk about help me to look inside of myself, to see the person that I've always wanted to be. I had a good upbringing, was always about values and morals, and I got sidetracked along the way for various reasons and influences. It's nice to come back to the center and come back to myself, to help me realize and identify the areas that maybe I was unaware or unattuned to. It made me more aware of where I wanted to make changes. I felt accountable because of that, and I've been able to put those teachings into practice. I'm enjoying the world around me more. I have more patience with everyone in my world. It has been really beneficial to me. I can't believe it's been a 12-week program. It felt like 6. We started not that long ago. Accolades to everyone who made a change and trusted themselves to make a leap forward to make that difference. It's nice to hear everyone talking and sharing about their situations and experiences and be open-minded to new experiences as well. I'm glad I got involved again. Thanks to the center for being here and providing these supports to us. James has now graduated high school this year. He's been active in cultural programming at the center. Some of the things that we find really get traction with the guys and help really help build these relationships is that cultural programming. Pearl took the lead and developed Horse Ability, which is developed a intimate partner violence horse ability program. So we go out to the horse ability farm with clients and work with horses and learn grounding skills and different wellness techniques. We do drum making workshops, ribbon vest making workshops with the guys, medicine pouches. Moose Hide Day was a big one this year. We actually presented up at Canada College and had 2 graduates come up and present in breakout sessions about what they're doing to help end violence against women in their communities. And our On the Land program is always a big success. We take men out. We just did a survival on the land for 2 nights, went out camping. And we have a fall one coming up in November, December, where they're going to learn how to trap beaver. If we get a beaver, how to skin it, prepare the hide, and what to do, and how to prepare beaver. Yeah, so the cultural piece is definitely what separates us from that PARS program and shows the success that we're having. And just having people who have graduated the 12-step program, we're finding more and more want to come back and take it a second time around, which really shows it's more than just a program about going through and getting that piece of paper for court, that they're actually learning and doing the healing in the program. That's the one thing that when we do our final sharing circle, all the clients say is it's the healing that goes on in those rooms and in those groups together that's the big sell for this program.
Okay, thank you very much, Pearl and Chris. Those stories are so enlightening, I think, and really emphasize the uniqueness of the programs and how their distinct approaches are able to support Indigenous folks as they go through these journeys. So thank you very much for that. And I think now we're available for some questions. I think that some did come into the chat.
Yeah, thank you for that informative presentation. We're going to move to the questions. Ali Stevenson, the HSJCC's Engagement and Communication Specialist, will be facilitating the audience questions. Our presenters will do their best to answer as many questions as possible. So please be patient as we move through your questions. Just a reminder to please submit your questions in the Q&A box, not the chat. So over to Ali.
Thanks, Trevor, and thank you to the OFIFC team for such an informative presentation. I think it's so amazing to have kind of an overview of, the programming itself, and then also complement that with these wonderful success stories. So just, thank you for sharing your knowledge and experiences with these programs. Yes, as Trevor mentioned, we do have a few questions in the chat. So I'm just going to get to them. I will do my best to answer them in the order in which they came in. And yeah, if you've submitted questions in the chat box, please insert them in the Q&A box just so I can make sure I'm getting to them in the correct order. So I will start with the first one. Now, this is a question I don't know if Hayden and Team U are aware of, but someone asked, what is the rationale for attaching a cost to the PAR program sessions, given that some folks may face financial barriers that could reduce their motivation and ability to attend?
Yes, great question. I don't think that we're really in a position to answer that. I'm not sure exactly what the rationale for the financial cost is. But we at the OFIFC and with the Friendship Centers recognize it is a barrier for folks. And that is one of the reasons why the IS-IPVP programs do not have a financial cost in recognition of that.
Awesome, thank you. The next question, how does the diversion program manage the issue of non-contact orders between program participants when contacting survivors, so the victims, as part of the diversion process? Example, do you have agreements with the Crown?
So we don't have, but we have we do have agreements with the Crown, but when it comes to the victims, so how it generally works is, so Crown will screen a file They'll then screen for Indigenous diversion that will come over to us. If the individual, if there's a non-communication order for the a non-communication order, and if they want to reconcile, and if they want to get back together, or if they'd like to have a restorative circle or a support circle, we'll then reach out to Crown for a variation, and it's usually the screening Crown that will variate, and that Crown is usually the Crown that follows the case throughout until charges are withdrawn.
Thank you very much. Okay, next question. If an IS-IVP program is not available in the person's area, are individuals given the option of attending an IS-IVP program virtually or out of jurisdiction while accessing local supports?
We deliver the program virtually here as well, which works out well for those who aren't in our area. Also for those who may have conditions that might not allow them to be able to attend the center. This way they're still able to attend the programming while they're undergoing those conditions. So yeah, we offer it virtually. Until we got the proper team set up for it, it was a little bit difficult, but now that we've gone through a couple of sessions virtually, we find it the virtual and in-person classes blend really well.
Thank you, Chris. The next question is there any future consideration to run this program on some level in the institution? IPV programming is lacking in the institution. Often the individual leaves custody and returns to reside with their victim. Seems like a gap in the system.
That is a great question, and I think Nick and I are both smiling to ourselves because we recently, ourselves and a couple of our colleagues were recently at the pre-release fair, and we went to all the federal institutions, male institutions in Ontario, and that came up a lot, the need for institutional programming and Indigenous specific programming in terms of violence prevention programs. So that is a conversation that we're having. And I guess I would suggest to, I don't know, maybe we'll circle back on that another time, but it is a conversation that we're having and we're interested to see where that leads. But I would say that based on our recent experience too, like there's a lot of conversation about the need for the programming within institutions.
Thanks, Hayden. Another question regarding kind of communication with the Crown. Are there designated friendship court workers that connect and communicate with the Crown?
Yes, over at the North Bay Indigenous Friendship Center, we do have a criminal court worker. So Shelley Boucher, she does work down at the court. She has a great relationship with the courts. And then we have Lori Hatch. Lori Hatch is our youth and family court worker. So they are always down over at the courthouse. They've been in their positions for quite some time and they have a great relationship with Crown.
Awesome, thank you, Pearl. The next question is just about the availability of the programs. I know there's a slide indicating that they were available in Ontario, the programs, but that there were coordinators in other provinces. I don't know if you could speak to the locations of the programs and coordinators.
Yeah, maybe it would be easier for us to send a link or a list of where the programs are. I know there has been coordinators trained, as that slide mentioned, in Alberta and British Columbia, but maybe Ali, we can speak to you after, and we can share a list of where these locations are.
That would be great. Sounds good, Chris. All right. Attendee commented, it's a long wait for clients who would like to take the program I Am a Kind Man. How can clients jump in midway instead of waiting?
So with ours, there is a wait. We do have a wait list. Usually we can get them jumped in a program if we're up to week 3. After that, doing the catch up gets a little much in the large group. So we've been running multiple cohorts at once, just to we have a Monday night and a Tuesday night class right now, just to try and eliminate that short list because the demand is so high for the program.
Thank you, Chris. Another question is, are these offered to people in family court?
That's a great question. And I believe that these are offered through the criminal court process. Berlin, Chris, I don't know if you've had other experiences?
Yes, we've actually one of our successes. He's involved in family court, and he's taken the program twice. They are offered in family court.
Thank you. Another question, is there a female equivalent to the IS-IVP program?
It's not really equivalent. So what we do is we allow the youth and females to come in and to join the program. And we all work together in a circle. And I've also co-facilitated with Chris as well, to have that female and to have that male facilitator there available.
Yeah, that's definitely an ask or a request we're seeing all across different communities in Ontario. And I know Sault Ste. Marie, shout out to the Friendship Center up there. They have taken upon themselves to develop a sort of female or equivalent of Kizhaay Anishinaabe. I think the title translates to "I'm a kind-hearted woman" or something like that. But they've got that program. I think they've run it once, but we're definitely hearing that that's a need in community. As we mentioned, the referrals usually go to ICJP, but that's sort of more of a, it's not the 12-step program, it's the healing circles. So it's definitely a need that we're going to, alongside the programming within the institutions, that's kind of the work that us at OFIFC are working on.
Thank you, Nick.
Touch on the institution piece. We were delivering it here at the North Bay Jail. The problem with our institution is getting time to actually get a space in the building. Between lockdowns and programming, it became our time slots kept getting canceled, so we ended up having to give it up, unfortunately. But yeah, for us in the institution, it was just a matter of being able to actually get through those first set of doors to get the space. While we were in there was great participation in the institution, and actually it gave people kind of a head start, because when they were released, they sought out the program afterwards.
Thank you, Chris. We have time for 2 more questions. So the next one is, does Friendship Center have to connect with the Victim Witness Assistant Program? If so, is VWAP reaching out to Friendship Centers or vice versa?
So I can jump in here. So we've actually recently been trying to strengthen our relationship with VWAP, and we've already done some presentations with them just to kind of talk more about how they can reach out to friendship centers and vice versa. There's been some talk about maybe creating some MOUs or protocols in place. So like VWAP workers and also friendship center staff can literally hold the hands of survivors and victims walking through the justice system process. I don't know if it's mandatory for them to reach out. Maybe, perhaps someone else can confirm that on the call here. But we have already been connecting some of the VWAP staff and program managers with Friendship Center staff and looking at how we can strengthen that relationship.
Thank you, Chelsea. And I'll get to the last question just for folks who may have additional questions. I don't know, Hayden, the best way to contact your team if folks have additional questions that we maybe weren't able to answer today.
Oh, sorry, we can, I can drop some email addresses in the chat, and people are welcome to reach out. So I will do that now.
Awesome. And I'll end us off with a comment and a question. So one of our attendees said, Chi Miigwech to all of the presenters for the amazing work you're all doing. I'm with a community health center that is operating from a braided model of health and well-being that integrates Indigenous and Western knowledge and practices. The practices that you share sound that they would be benefit to many, including Indigenous people and people who are not Indigenous. Are there any resources that you would recommend to develop healing circles or programs that are open to the public, so not court-ordered? And do you think these programs could be adapted to Indigenous and non-Indigenous participants with both respect and accountability in mind?
I can take that. The circles, definitely, you don't have to be Indigenous to be sitting in our circles. We're all shoulder to shoulder. No one's higher than anyone. There's no hierarchy. And we do have support circles. There are exploratory circles as well if you want to explore different options that may be available. Community circles. We just actually got a new WABN worker. WABN works with youth, so she'll be looking at doing circles into schools, support circles for the youth, and just in case a community circle is ever needed, at least that way she's made a connection with students and with the community.
Thank you so much, Pearl. All right, I will hand it back to Trevor to close us out today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone. I want to thank all of our presenters, Hayden, Nick, Keanna, Chris, Chelsea, and Pearl for this fantastic presentation. I ask that people take a moment to provide their feedback on today's webinar. The survey link will be inserted in the chat as well as sent out to everyone who attended. A reminder that you will be sent a link to the presentation and the slides once it's all posted to our website and to YouTube. And thank you everyone for having joined us. Really appreciate it. See you at our next webinar.
Thank you.